Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Zucco, and I don't know what I'm doing right now. I was thinking about making this video for a while. I knew this was on the table, but I still don't know if this is a really good idea, but we're gonna go through with it. I would like to talk about Mio from Xenoblade 3. And just Mio. This is a pre-order roundup where I talk about one singular figure for probably like 15 minutes. Now you might be thinking, why don't you just wait till the end of the month? And like, do you really expect me to wait till the end of the month to talk about this? This is like the only thing I ever talk about. I feel like I have to. I feel like this is something that needs to be done. I will, of course, talk about her in the pre-order roundup for May, but at a much, like, quicker pace. We're not gonna really dwell on it as much as we will here. But there is actually a lot I want to say, and I feel like this is the best way to do it. So, let's get into it. Now, a couple of days ago, we did learn that Mio was spotted in the wild in Japan. I don't remember the building or the event, but we saw her price and her date, so we knew that she was coming out relatively soon. It was like a surefire bet, and wouldn't you know it, as soon as Golden Week ended, she went up for pre-order. This is going to take about a year to get released. She's coming out in May of 2025, which is an extremely long time. But typically for Good Smile Company these days, that's about the time we wait for like any of their scale figures. What does suck is that we're at a point where we don't know if there's another Xenoblade scale figure coming in the near future, or at all. I'm sure they will make another one eventually. These seem to do pretty well, but it's weird that we don't know anything. It took a very long time for Mio to finally go up for pre-order. It was very silent for a very long time until we saw the prototype, and then it didn't take too much longer until we finally saw her painted. Maybe there were some struggles behind the scenes, we don't really know. There's a couple of companies working on this. You got Nintendo involved, you got Monolith, you got Good Smile Company. They had to hire Saitom again to make the sculpts, or rather the design of this figure. I don't know if he did that for the other Xenoblade figures, at least for Xenoblade 2. I know that Pyra and Mithra have art that look exactly like their scales, but I actually don't know if the art came first and then they like just copied it, or if that art was designed for the figures. I probably should have looked that up, but I never bothered to, because I did get the figures like during their second release, so I was never like part of that hype train. I think the most obvious thing they should do is make Noah at this point, but they don't want to make any male characters. We didn't get Shulk, we didn't get Rex. I don't feel like Noah is special to the point where he should get one over those two, but I just feel like Nintendo really likes to push whatever is their most like relevant games when it comes to merchandise. So right now would be the best bet to get somebody like Noah. But they don't like making guys into scale figures. Good Smile and Max Factory specifically, like they barely do it unless the characters are extremely popular. So your best bet would be like Uni, Senna. I would want A, but I don't know who else they would make from 3 specifically. I would like to see them still tackle 3 just because we have like plenty from 2, and I don't see them going back to 1 definitive edition, right? Like they're not really trying to market that right now, even though they really should. I think characters like Shulk are timeless in terms of Xenoblade, so people will always be excited about that. But yeah, nothing announced, and I don't know when we'll get a new one. But we do have Uni's Figma on the way, which is very exciting. I know I'm more of a scale figure collector, but I absolutely love it that Uni is getting a figure at all, because I did not see that coming. Is this what it's like when I don't have to worry about time and making sure the video is concise? Because I just was rambling there. I don't even know if I said anything interesting. But let's get to her price, which is 15,800 yen, which is so goddamn cheap for like this kind of figure. There was never like a point in my mind where I thought this should be as expensive as, say, Pyra or Mithra, definitely not Nia or Cosmos, maybe Melia. I feel like Melia's figure is the most comparable in terms of like size and sculpt and details. I feel like Melia's just overall design is a little bit more complex. Her hoop hair and her wings, like on her head too, just there's a lot of work that they put into those parts of the figure, and they look beautiful. But then you have stuff like her staff, which really isn't that impressive looking if you ask me. And you know, Mio's Moonblades, I would say look a lot better, and you get 2 of them. Even if they're smaller, I feel like there is more detail and like more colors packed in. What I'm trying to say is that I think they kind of balance out in the end. Yet Mio is like 3,000 to 4,000 yen less than her. And because the yen is so weak right now, she is about $94, which is like unheard of. I know Good Small Company has made figures that are around this price point. I could think of, say, the quintessential quintuplets, where they're in the date style outfits, very comparable to that. But it always just felt like the Xenoblade figures had a starting price of around 20,000 yen. That just felt right, you know, working with Nintendo and Monolith and whatnot. The licensing for this figure has to be so cheap. I don't understand how they could price it this low and make any profit at the end of the day. But that's certainly a huge plus to us, and I'm hoping this figure sells pretty damn well just to show Good Small Company or Max Factory that we're still very clearly interested in the Xenoblade series and the figures that they can make. But this did all come with a catch. Unfortunately, Mio does not have a longer hair option, which I think a lot of us fans were hoping Good Small Company would do. There was a lot of speculation about it, but unfortunately, we don't have that here. And I think it's okay. Obviously, I would have loved that. I would have paid more for it. Maybe her longer hair would have bumped the price tag up to around 20,000 yen, and that would have worked too. I think a lot of people would have been fine with that. But the lower price does make this a more approachable figure, even for people who, like, say, love Xenoblade but don't really collect anime scales, because they're so goddamn expensive. Not to mention, you do now avoid, like, those seam lines and those, like, connecting points in the hair. There might be a seam line in the hair for all I know, but the sculpt should be a little bit cleaner without swappable parts and whatnot. So they could just focus on her short hair, make it as pretty as possible, and I'm okay with that. Anyway, let's continue on. The one thing that I'm actually not the biggest fan of on this figure, there is a downside for me, is of course the core crystal. If you're a fan of Xenoblade, you're probably nitpicking about this too. I don't know why Good Small Company just won't do it correctly. They didn't do it right on the Figma. Nia's is wrong as well, but they just don't really care. It's a metallic blue, which looks fine, but it really should be a mix of light blue and pink, kind of swirling about. There might be like a hint of pink in there. Some of these photos do show like a hue a little bit. That could just be my hope and dreams, but I can't really show that well because these photos are only so big. Can't really zoom in any further than what we're looking at right now, but it almost looks like there might be some pink, but even if there is, doesn't really look as it should, and I am bummed by that. But yeah, everything else is honestly fantastic on this figure, such as her base, which is the Zephyr class symbol. Now, unfortunately, the Xenoblade figures really haven't had the best bases. They're like serviceable at best, in my opinion. Pyra's and Mithra's, they're okay. Nia's was a good idea, but I feel like they kind of fumbled it a little bit, just due to the lack of detail. And Melia's was probably my favorite, just because she's like in a grassy field. I thought that was a good idea. But this is actually perfect. It just makes so much sense. It looks really clean as well. I couldn't really tell what it was originally when we first saw this figure, but it's very obviously just her class, which is all about speed and fighting with those moon rings, dodging a lot, which is why the symbol is the exact same as the moon blades that are in her hand. It's a really nice color too, dark blue and a little bit of light blue on the symbol itself. A lot of lines there just for some added detail. Looks very clean. Fits in style with like the, I guess, Xenoblade 3 worlds and just aesthetic, the design of it all. I love it. And this figure just overall has an extremely small footprint. Like, you're not really going to struggle to find anywhere to put Mio because she's not a shelf hog. She is so thin. The base is so small. And I can't imagine she's going to need any acrylic support, which is not something you can say about a lot of the other Xenoblade figures. And that's really just due to her pose, right? Now, some people don't really like this pose, and I think that's understandable. Compared to the other Xenoblade figures, she's the most, like, normal, I guess. She's not really as dynamic. She's just kind of chilling there. There's like a slight sass to it, maybe because of the hand on the hip, and just like the way her head is tilted a little bit. Seems very relaxed, very chill. And maybe that's not like the first thing you think of when you think of Mio. To me, this is like Mio when she's stress-free, when things aren't the absolute worst in her world, right? Because the entire time you're playing that game, Mio is just like lost in her thoughts. She's worried about the future. She's stressed about it. She's depressed about it, right? But this doesn't feel like that. And I understand that doesn't really remind you, like, this is not what you experienced for a lot of the game. But there's certainly points in Xenoblade 3 where her, like, normal personality, like, if she wasn't having to worry all the time about, like, all the danger around her. She's a little sassy, she's making jokes and stuff like that. There are key points I can remember, like when she's cooking with Senna, just being sarcastic and stuff like that. When she's talking to Uni at Capricorn Peak, there's also the point when she's talking about the hair and cutting it and whatnot. I don't know, I feel like this certainly feels like Mio enough to me, but it wasn't the first idea I had in mind, like, when I thought of Mio getting a figure. If you asked me to design a Mio figure, this probably wouldn't be it. But they did ask Saitom specifically to make up a pose for her, and this is what he came up with, so I'm not going to argue with it. I like it. She looks very pretty. Also, this figure does do a great job at making her legs look very attractive. I love her leg sculpts, which is usually not something I often say. I mean, certainly if they're a bit more fan servicey, I guess, if the figure is really, like, bringing your attention to it, then yeah, I get it. But that's not really what's going on here. It's just Mio with her leggings, but they're so, like, expertly painted. The shading is sublime. Even a little bit of creasing on, like, one of the knees. I don't even know if it's on the other side. But they just look so realistic, especially for the price tag. I'd say you get what you pay for, but I think we're actually getting a little bit more. Now, one of the other things that I think are a pretty big highlight of this figure is actually her jacket, which she snags from the city when they left their gear behind. I never would have guessed that this would be silver because it doesn't look silver in the game, and the Figma was gray, so I just kind of assumed that would be the case here. But it has such a nice, shiny luster to it. Really nicely painted. Love that just shade of silver here, and it's very wrinkly too, which I don't know, really makes the whole jacket just stand out in a very pleasing way. But yeah, the design, and just like the way she's wearing it, very similar to, say, Kurisu. Like, it's not really on her shoulders, it hangs off a little bit, and there's straps keeping it in place. I can't ever imagine that being comfortable, but it's certainly stylish looking. I do love how it looks on her. It does expose the shoulders a little bit, give you a better look at her neck and whatnot, those collarbones. That's the real fan service of this figure. Or, I guess, we can point out the belly button. Like, usually you don't see her tummy either in the game, but I guess just to make the clothing look a little bit more realistic, it's kind of like fluttering as she's moving just ever so slightly, just to show that tummy. Now, you don't really get that many good pictures of it, but it does seem like they really wanted that to look good, and I could certainly applaud them for that. The rest of the outfit, though, is pulling from the Agnian culture, right? She's from Agnes, which is one of the two main nations in the game, which has like a Japanese-inspired aesthetic to it and just designs overall. A lot of gold, white, and red. You got those red ropes, Shimenawa ropes. It kind of looks like that to me, like the ones you see at shrines. I'm sure that's not what that actually is, because it wouldn't make sense in the universe, but I do like it. The charm around her her buckle looks good. There's a little bit of red also on the boots, like the cloth tied up, I guess just to keep them in place. I don't know how secure that would be, but it does give you a little bit of like dangling cloth down there. But the red certainly pops, right? It's used very sparingly throughout this outfit, notably in her hair braid as well. Very important that they don't make that sloppy on the final product, if you ask me. Her hair sculpt does look good. I'm not going to say it's super impressive or anything, but I do think it's a very nice hair sculpt. There's a lot of individual strands back there. Her ears look very fluffy, which I think is important, and the shading looks quite solid, if you ask me. I think this photo highlights it the best. You can see there's a couple of different shades of gray in her hair, like down here, and even the tips of her ears are a very dark gray, just to make the paint a little bit more complex up here. Her eyes as well look absolutely perfect. They nailed that Saitom art style. A very bright yellow too, just looks lovely. She has the exact same smile as like every other Xenoblade figure for some reason. I don't know why they do that. These characters are pretty expressive, especially in 3, where it seemed like Monolith Soft really wanted to like make their characters as emotional and expressive as possible, but we still just have this like cute smile thing going on. Doesn't bug me, but I do think it's kind of funny. If you just look at them all like side by side, they're all smiling pretty much the exact same way. Before I forget, let's talk about those Moonblades, which are her weapons of choice. The first thing that really stands out to me that they actually remembered to put on this figure are these Ouroboros symbols on both sides of the Moonblades. The Figma notably did not have these. I guess you could argue that they weren't like powered on or something, but I feel like that's a kind of lazy excuse for them. I feel like they just didn't want to bother with it. even though they should be there. I'm sure these are just like stickers or decals or something, so it couldn't have been that hard, but it just makes these feel a little bit more authentic. Now, some of these photos do make the Moonblades not look silver. I'm pretty sure they are. That's how they looked in person. But this like inner ring should be silver, but a lot of these photos make them look white. And again, maybe this is a situation where I'm colorblind, but this certainly looks white to me. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure I have a photo of it somewhere, which I'll put on screen. Actually, I did find it, so I'll just put it right here. These are definitely silver, right? But some of these photos really don't look like that. So it's now a question, will they actually be silver on the final product? Because I think it looks way better if they're silver. So that's a bit of speculation for you guys. Everything else about them, though, looks really good, if you ask me. The gold paint looks excellent, little tips of red here and there, and the outer ring is like a clear, translucent yellow, which is like the energy parts. Are these powered by ether? I don't know. I don't think they ever really talk about that. Doesn't really matter at all. But yeah, I guess that's where the sharpness and the danger comes from these dual moon blades. I think that's everything of note that I really needed to talk about. I think this is an exceptionally nice figure. I am super biased about it, but I do feel like for this price point, this is actually phenomenal. And I feel like this really makes a statement about how like other companies are definitely overcharging, but there is also a situation where maybe Good Small Company just has better deals because they are so big. They like run this industry, right? So I'm sure they have access to just like cheaper materials and stuff, and they probably cut better deals with these companies when it comes to licensing. But when I see a figure of like a schoolgirl or something and it's like 20,000 yen, I'm just gonna remember this and be like, dude, this costs so much less and it's totally more detailed. So I don't know how these companies are going to compete with something like this. They don't really need to because there's so many figures for everybody. Like, this being good doesn't hurt another company, but it certainly makes them look a little worse when they're overcharging for all of their stuff. Like Amakuni. I love those guys, but my god, can they not price a figure to save their ass. It just sucks so much because they make a lot of stuff I like, but even like the most basic figures of theirs are like 8,000 yen more than this, or 6,000, something like that. I will say this is also a standard release. Even though I haven't really seen discounts for this figure, you can buy her elsewhere like Ami Ami or Hobby Link Japan, which does have a good price. I actually don't know what the conversion rate is on Good Small Company right now because this is about $94, but they have her listed for $15,800, yet that equates to about $101 right now. And the exchange rate really hasn't changed that much over like the past 20 hours since the figure was first put up. So I don't know, you're just getting a really, really good deal. And if you do pay in USD, you will have this price like locked in until she comes out. I don't know how this works anymore because they changed the website. I am now forced to pay in USD, and I don't know how that works for other countries. Like, the website is just worse as far as I'm concerned, and I can't help you there right now, unfortunately. But because she is a standard release, you could buy her anywhere, and the price really shouldn't be that much different. But yeah, this is a fantastic day for me. As a Xenoblade fan, this is like the best outcome possible. It's going to be a very long wait until she comes out, and I guess we really won't have that many more opportunities to talk about this series until like the Uni Figma, or they actually announce something new, which is what I am looking forward to, because I know it's got to happen at some point. So maybe at the next One Fest, maybe at like the next One Hobby or Smile Fest or whatever the hell they're doing. But yeah. Hey, if you watched this video, thanks. I can't imagine anybody getting through this one. I think this might actually be a 30-minute video because, I don't know, I can't help it. But either way, if you watched it, thank you very much. I'll see you guys around for the next one, which will be an unboxing video. I did already start it, but I wanted a little bit of extra time to take the B-roll and whatnot. So, you got this video instead. I'll see you around though. Thanks for watching. Later.